featuring a dynamic uh, list of holistic healers. We have Sister Marina Olokun, Sister Omolewa, the Entheogenic Midwife, and Baba Wekesa Madzimoyo. They will be discussing their experiences with personal healing and community healing across the diaspora. They have lived in different places and have extensive experience with their work. And so they will be talking about different aspects of that. We're going to dive right in. Our first panelist is Sister Marina Olokun. Let me unmute you. Let me make sure I know how to do that. Okay, you're unmuted. And she'll share more about herself, her company, and get into her work here. So please go ahead, my sister.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Marina Olokun. It's a pleasure to be here for the Black Sustainability Summit. I think that it's an honor and a privilege to speak before you all on this 5th year. I personally didn't come with any PowerPoint presentations. I didn't come with any charts and graphs and things like that. But I come as a servant of the Most High, and I come to communicate with you all in regards to some very important things that we need to take into consideration moving into this new heaven and this new earth, this new experience that we're having. A lot of people are already aware about the different foods that they should be eating. With technology, communication, and information, I think that it would be a disservice to go over every single food that would be recommended for people of our DNA or our genetic code. But I do have that information available. A lot of people know me as Return of the Goddess on Instagram, and I invite you to check me out on Instagram through Return of the Goddess. When you go on the Return of the Goddess handle, you'll find information in regards to Dr. Sebi's nutritional guidelines. And these are the guidelines for consumption of foods based on our genetic code. And you'll also find you'll also find a link that'll lead you to the Facebook group that we have, which is Dr. Sebi's Bolingo Dimension Cleanse. And so Dr. Sebi appointed me as the president of the Bolingo Dimension. And the Bolingo Dimension is all about self-love and self-care and getting back to nature, or I should say getting forward to nature. And so getting forward to nature is something that is absolutely necessary in this day and time that we're living in. And I think that there's some difficulty in regards to us understanding or overstanding what that looks like, right? And so one of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention is some things that I've been doing in my personal spare time, right? And so I have been completely indulged in this epic book called the Mahabharata. And some of you may be familiar with it. Some of you may be a little more familiar with the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita. And so the Gita is really about this conversation that a warrior is having with what they consider the Christ in their culture, who is his charioteer. And so the Mahabharata is the entire legacy or story in regards to this particular dynasty that this warrior comes from. And so the story, and I'm taking this direction with you guys because I really feel like Spirit is leading me for us to have a conversation. For me, as a presenter, to connect with you from mouth to ear. And so, because that's our indigenous language, that's our primordial essence of creation, right? The drum beat and the storytelling. And so the Mahabharata is an epic tale from India. and it's in regards to a royal family that has some conflict going on that leads to a war that changes the entire framework of what we know now as present day India. And what I like about it is that it has a strong African centered background. When you read the story and you get the visuals that come to mind, it's really about our indigenous ancient history. And so, you know, everybody's royal, you know, everybody is in their place. You know, this takes place about maybe 1,500 years before the birth of Christ. And so, as I was mentioning, the story is just really all about how the coming of age was birthed, right? And I feel like what I'm receiving in regards to this book is that we're in a very similar time. We're in a time when things are changing, when information is changing. People are looking for answers, but they're not able to find it through the secular world based on the information that is being brought to us through media and things of that nature. And so these people, they had a royal lineage, and they had some issues in terms of the truth and untruth, right? And so this whole entire war was fought on the premise of truth and untruth. And it started from a woman, you know, it started from, the conflict started from a disrespect in regards to a woman, right? And we're in this society now where we see women disrespected a lot, and we see women who are looking for some type of refuge. They're not really sure where to get this refuge from, but it's really about women wanting to feel protected in a society where they're not protected. And so this particular woman, she was called a whore, and she was disrobed in the public court. We see things like this happening all the time in modern day present history, right? But this war started because she was the wife of 5 husbands, and she was disrespected. They were taken into exile for fear that they would become the leadership. They were the rightful leaders to begin with, right? But they had removed themselves from leadership. They went into exile. So it's a lot of what we experience now. I personally feel like, I was never a slave. My ancestors were never slaves. We were always royal people. But I do understand that some of us as Black Africans of the diaspora have come by way of some type of transfer from Africa to the Americas. And so when we're looking at our history, right? There's a disconnect somewhere between how we got here and how to survive here, right? And this is the sustainability conference, so this is the foundation of this entire conversation. And there's some questioning in regards to that. And in the story, there was some questioning in regards to who should be the royal house, who should be the ones that lead the country and sustain the country. And so, so it looks like I have to make a long story short. And so there was a war that ensued, and the war that ensued really had to do with these brothers that were fighting 2 different sides. One thinking that they're fighting for the good of the nation, and the others fighting for truth. The ones who were fighting for the good of the nation, they happened to be the quote unquote bad guys in the story. And so a lot of blood was shed in regards to family members, right? And at the end of the story, nobody was really happy because so many of the brothers and sisters had died in warfare. The war was only 17 days. When we look at what we're experiencing here in America, we've been here for at least 400 years. I believe we've been here longer than that. But the issues that we're dealing with right now is identity and how to survive and sustain ourselves, and what we should be consuming in order to do that. And I feel like we've really gotten away from that. And so how do we get back to that? I really think that first we have to realize that we're in a society where a lot of things that we see, hear, and experience are not real. And so coming back to nature requires us to go into nature. It requires us to utilize our intuition, and it requires us to get to a place where we can sustain ourselves through certain fruits and vegetables, and sustain ourselves by avoiding certain things in the secular world that would prohibit our growth and our development in regards to this natural world that we live in. And so having an opportunity to live and work with Dr. Sebi, I had an opportunity to go into nature and to quiet down the noise and to really get back to myself. And so what I provide and share with the community is exactly that, is about coming out of this worldly concept that's not working, that has already been destroyed, and get to a place where we can begin to go back and understand what truth looks like, what healing looks like, and how to navigate on that path towards healing. And so I didn't realize 15 minutes would go by so fast. But what I want to really drive home to you all is that it starts with self-love. It starts with self-care. It starts with knowing who we are. And a lot of times, the way that we find that path is through herbs. Herbs are considered the healing of the nation. Herbs are considered the forgiveness of the sins that we commit in our bodies. And so our medicine naturally should be fruits, should be vegetables, because they are conducive to our genetic code. And thank you. And so we have those as a staple. And then when we are dealing with healing on a deeper level, because of the traumas that we've experienced through warfare and through the social economic breakdown that we've been experiencing, the cycle of poverty and etc. We first need to get our minds right. And I truly believe that eating fresh fruits and vegetables, avoiding certain meats, because the meats are just, they're no longer healthy for us. They never really were. And when we look at how people did things indigenously, we didn't eat meat all year round. That was during the Thanksgiving. That was during the harvest, when we gathered the animals for slaughter, and they sustained us throughout the winter when it was cold. Nowadays, we eat animal products 3 times to 5 times a day. And so our digestive systems are not getting a chance to rest and to repair. And those negative energies from these animals who are not really fully animals getting into the bloodstream is causing us to have some mental delusions and some misunderstandings about what life is and what are our priorities here, our duties here as the caretakers of this earth. And so I think that we really need to bring our focus back towards certain herbal compounds that'll cleanse ourselves from a cellular level, and allow that cellular cleansing to release some of the negative energy that we've attached to release the negative toxins that are in the body that have to be removed in order for us to start seeing things more clearer and coming back closer to truth. And so I give thanks for the opportunity to speak. I give thanks for you all coming and listening. And I'm looking forward to answering any questions that you all have during the question and answer panel. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sister Marina. Next, we're going to have Baba Wekesa Madzimoyo speaking with us, his perspective and experiences on healing.
Today, well, we're known for our warriors, healers, and builders personal and leadership development tool set. It's communication, it's mental health, it's emotional health that accounts for oppression. But today I'm not going to talk to you primarily about that, though it's certainly intertwined. Today I want to talk to you about something that I call freedom arteries, the Black heart, personal journey and research. And this is a story, and in it, there are a number of options and things that we need to do and to look out for. But it's a story about a journey, a personal journey. It has health implications for me, and I think for many Africans here and throughout the diaspora, as well as other people in the world. 10 weeks ago, on August 9th, I was on a 20-mile bike ride. I was riding with my son, and we were preparing for what was going to be a 100-mile bike ride on the Silver Common Trail in Smyrna or Cobb County, Georgia, that goes all the way to the Alabama line and back. 8.8 miles in, we turn around because it's like, okay, that's almost 9. We'll fudge it a little bit and just do 18 today. And when I started pedaling back, I started feeling a pain in my chest. Hadn't felt that kind of pain before, and I had done a 100-mile bike ride before, and I ride regularly, so I wasn't familiar with that particular kind of pain. It wasn't a shooting pain, wasn't anything in my arm, and my breathing was still deep and full. It's just that it was like kind of like a dull kind of pain in my chest, and I wasn't familiar with it. So after a little while, I said, let me stop and see what that's about. And I rested for a while and walked around for a while and squatted down for a while and decided it wasn't really doing that much better. So I said, well, maybe if I just get on the bike and ease on toward our journey, toward back, then it would move around. But after about 50 yards, it was clear that it wasn't going anywhere. And so I laid on the ground, put my head on my helmet, and my son, his name is Tafari Melazizwe, started to call Mama Fia. A person on the trail who's also walking was or I don't know whether she was walking or whether she was riding. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mama Fia. Mama Fia telling me I gotta go faster. All right. So the bottom line is we stopped. The nurse called that was walking called an ambulance or paramedics, got in the paramedics, got to the hospital, and I was alive and kicking, and 5 minutes in, I lost consciousness. And they defibrillated me once. I regained consciousness again. They shipped me, started getting me ready to go to the CAT lab, which was the operating room in this case, because they determined I had a 100% blockage in my artery, in my LAD, that is my left anterior descending artery, one of the main arteries in my heart. My heart, when I lost consciousness had stopped pumping blood, and it started doing like that, just wobbling or fibrulating, which is why they use a defibrillator. All in all, 3 times they used a defibrillator, and they were able to successfully remove the blockage, and they inserted a stent. So I'm fast forward, I'm in the ICU room, and I'm wondering why I have a stent. And I'm wondering what the blockage was about. And they first said cholesterol. That didn't hold up too well because my diet has been fruits, vegetables, and some seafood for over 40 years. And the blood test that they came back with said, no, you don't have high cholesterol. I'm not going to take you through all of their various theories. My theory is that it was a blood clot, okay? Their cholesterol theories don't hold water. The bottom line is, this happened on a Sunday. When I got ready to leave on Tuesday to come home, what they said is they wanted me on 4 different medications. First, it was going to be Lipitor. I said, your own test said I don't have high cholesterol. Why do you want me on Lipitor? they said, well, it does some other things. The next was high blood pressure medication, metoprolol. I said, I don't have high blood pressure. For my age, my blood pressure is in the normal range, measured for the last 2 days. They said, but it does other things. Then next they said, take aspirin as a blood thinner, and then also want you to take Brilinta as an antiplatelet drug. He also mentioned Plavix could be used as a replacement for Brilinta because it was expensive. These were antiplatelet drugs. So those were the 4 medications I left with on that Tuesday. Determined, and I told them that this is not a parent-child relationship. I'll be looking for how to replace those medications with natural ones because I don't really believe in taking the pharmaceuticals. And that's when they balked, I said, this is not a parent-child relationship. I appreciate your professional opinion. Thank you for saving my life. And I'm in charge of this body and have been since all these 5 years. Okay, so now this is where it really gets interesting. A week later, I go to the physician. I tell him I'm not taking the Lipitor. I don't have high cholesterol. I'm off of that. He fusses. I'm still off. Next, a high blood pressure medication. He fusses. I said I'm not taking that. The only 2 medications I'm willing to take are the medications, the blood thinner and the antiplatelet Brilinta or Plavix. So my that stent that they have don't clot, and I don't have another heart attack. Got it. Now. I discover upon coming home, I bought a, what do you call it here? Boom, got that. I bought a blood pressure monitor, a pretty expensive one, a good one, reliable one. And I noticed my blood pressure was high. I'm wondering why my blood pressure is high. My diet is actually better than it was before I went to the hospital. So why is my blood pressure high? Upon doing some research, we realized that the stent that they put in my heart was a drug-eluting stent. Now, I want to slow down a bit because I want y'all to get it, because often we don't know the difference. We go when we say there's a stent, they're going to put a stent, and there are actually many different kinds of stents. The 2 basic categories are a bare metal stent and a drug-eluting stent. Turns out that's the kind they placed in my heart. Of course, I was unconscious, so I had no say-so in the matter. What is the problem? Well, the problem in this case is that the drug in the drug-eluting stent is called sirolimus. Okay, it's an anti-rejection drug. There are a number of them, but they basically fall in the category of anti-rejection and are used when you give kidney transplants or organ transplants. Didn't know I had an organ transplant, but the side effect of this sirolimus drug, high blood pressure and high cholesterol. I said, oh, now it's making sense, even though my blood pressure numbers were correct and my cholesterol numbers were correct. They wanted me on blood pressure and high cholesterol medication. And so I said, I see now. So the challenge was how to understand what was going on, and also how to get off this blood pressure to get off now these 2 pieces of medication that I was on. And I started exercising vigorously because I did not want to go back on the metoprolol, okay, which is a beta blocker. A friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, Jawara, warned me. He said, listen, I know you really want to exercise vigorously so you don't have to do that high blood pressure medication right now. And I know it's caused by that stent in the drug, but you also in the middle of cardiac rehab. Bet. So I now had to slow down. I know the difference between retreat and surrender. This was a retreat, so I had to get back on the metoprolol, or at least I thought I did. And I did, to give myself more time to ease up on the exercise and ease through my cardio rehab. Now, during this time, Mama Fia had told Raina, actually, about my condition. Raina had confided in her that her grandmother was offered a bypass or a stent, chose neither, and grew her own arteries. This was interesting. And so while I was doing the work on getting past the blood pressure medication, getting past the the cholesterol medication, then I was making plans to learn more about this process of how we were going to, how I was going to grow arteries, because what I discovered is they couldn't go in and remove the stent. The only thing they would be doing is a heart bypass, and I wasn't about to trust the same people who put in a stent that I believe to this day that I didn't need to go in and then do a heart bypass. So the next best thing was to grow my own. And so the research was on about discovering how to do that. Turns out this was more important than I thought when I realized that the very drug in the stent was causing problems. It was causing high blood pressure. Why? Because my body recognizes it as a virus. It is attacking my T cells and attacking my neutrophils. This is not hype. This is not something that I read. This is happening in my heart as I speak to you. All right. So my body is responding. The body is self-healing, self-regulating in response to this what it perceives as a virus attacking me. It is responding. Now, blood pressure medication would only have me block the message that my brain is sending to my arteries that constrict. Okay, so I don't like that. I mean, I want it like you just interrupting the message, but you're not doing anything about the cause.
Exactly.
Long story short, and I'm gonna try to run this down. Long story short, right? My plan is this, and I'll answer more than doing question and answer. Let's see how much time. The long story short is this: blood pressure medication causes as many, if not more, strokes than it prevents. As a people, we're going to have to get to this. We're going to have to decide that we're going to fix this in our community and not with pharmaceuticals. Cholesterol medication causes all kinds of problems. And the very medication that is in, so I'm off that. I'm also off the Brilinta. I'm on no pharmaceutical medications. I'm handling everything that they were talking about handling that way. I'm handling through food, diet, herbs, and natural enzymes. And I'll be glad to tell you more about it. The big thing is, we're going to have to, as a people, we can forget sovereignty if we don't take charge of how to heal these big things. I don't just mean we're going to use echinacea for a cold. I'm talking about how we're going to handle heart attack, strokes, etc., high blood pressure naturally. And we need to, because this industry is really about creating sickness and grabbing us and using us as cannon fodder in the process.
Wow. Thank you so much. That's a huge, do you, really quick, I'll sneak in a question. Do you feel like you have a sense of what was the reason for the onset of on that bike ride?
The onset was 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I injured my hamstring. First, I pulled it, thought it was healed. It wasn't, and I pulled it again, but this time it tore. It didn't tear away from the bone, so I didn't have to go to the hospital, but there was bleeding internally, right? And you know how you get a black eye, that just means you got blood there under the skin. Well, I believe some of that clotted and made its way to my heart, to that particular artery. What needed to happen was for them to vacuum that out and maybe recommend blood thinners for a month or two. The reason that a stent was unnecessary is because I did not have a buildup of cholesterol or plaque narrowing my arteries. That was not my situation. At best, by their own admission, was 20%, and that was contained in a sac, but not 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and you don't give stents unless it's at least 70% block, usually more than that when you get a stent. And stents actually are not more effective when you have an 80% block than medications, quite frankly. But the point is, and by their own words, I only had 20. So really, realistically, the placing of the stent was for pharmaceutical profit purposes. But the initial blockage came because of the blood clot that made its way there.
I'm an injury. I'm very glad to hear your actual personal story, case study. I can relate. My father, who's transition this year, had that issue some years ago, causes, and then dealing with the mainstream medical establishments, how they treat us and our bodies is just not for our bodies. And so I hope we will engage that more in the Q&A about remedies for the African.
I love
Shout
to.
out
I love to. I mean, African
Sebi.
leaves are part of my herbs, and a number of things are part of my routine. I'll be glad to.
The African.
Now, also, just generally, I want you to understand, I'm back up to about 150 sit-ups a day. I exercise vigorously. I'm on my recumbent bike. I'll be back on my bike on the road within a week or so. Again, doing 20 miles and then beginning the process so that in the spring, I'll do the 100-mile bike ride.
He said, I'm going right back to where I left off. I respect that. I love that. Thank you so much. If I can ask you to please put yourself back on mute. We're going to go to our third and last panelist, hear from her, then open up our Q&A. Sister Omolewa, the Entheogenic Midwife. If you can unmute yourself. Speak on the summit here for the first time. I've seen her at some other conferences online earlier this year, and I'm so grateful she could join us as one of our new speakers and new to the summit and the Black Sustainability Network. She has a background in massage therapy, being a doula, and quite an interesting experience working with entheogens, which are our plant medicines.
This panel is about holistic health and balance, and I think that it's perfect that, thank you again, you invited me here to share about sacred plant medicine. And sacred plant medicines we've used indigenously for hundreds of thousands of years. Again, I work with psilocybin primarily, and mushrooms are an ancient technology that predate humans, predate law, predate language. So it takes us back into our original blueprint, which we need to tap into. Using these medicines to spiritually cleanse ourselves of all of the conscious and subconscious pollutants that we take on daily, monthly, weekly, yearly, from all over the place. Losing our connection with our ancestors, some of us, losing our connection with nature, which the earth and the planets and the elements are our oldest ancestors. So using these substances to go back into self, which everything springs forth from the inner being, and just really tapping into our environments. I'm about overall quality of living. And I found that the sacred plant medicines helped me to combat matters of the ego, being a woman, different relationships, having children, living in a mostly patriarchal society. Just all of these things kind of oppress us as women, as individuals. So using the entheogens to bring about truth, to activate our spiritual gifts, to help us to operate more authentically, which I know and feel helps us to operate in other areas of our life when it comes to buying land or operating on our land and running land in an optimal way, raising healthy children, raising conscious children, birthing conscious children, so using these substances as a way of deprogramming, reprogramming, purging from trauma, post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, sexual trauma, birth trauma that affects so many of us. Many of us women have been assaulted in some form or fashion, for lack of better words, but also our men as well. A lot of our men are toxic because of the elders and the women who may have molested them at young ages, or, fathers, family members. So allowing us to operate more in our spiritual self. It's believed we come here as spiritual beings having this human experience. So we need tools to help us to navigate cancer, heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes. We have a tool to navigate our inner selves. So I'm grateful for this work. I've been a massage therapist for 16 years, dealing with the most dynamic machine on this planet, which is the human body. We have a soul inserted into these human bodies, so we have to create a balance of living, again, as spiritual beings, having this human experience. So what happens when our loved ones depart from us? How do we process those emotions? How do we clear ourselves, cleanse ourselves, and look at these occurrences in their proper perspective so we can move forward clearly? Going into the medicine space, which has been used culturally in rites of passage ceremonies, which many of us as a people have not had. Many of us come from Christian backgrounds that teach us that Jesus, which is a white man, a deceased white man, has made these sacrifices for us. But we all know that our mother made the grand sacrifice for us to be here, regardless to what that story may be with our mommy daddy issues that some of us carry. So using these sacred plant medicines and plant teachers to learn more about ourselves, about our organs, outside of what society or teachers teach us or don't teach us about self, about healing, about ego, about being authentic, about what it means to be joyful and happy as a Black woman, and what that looks like for myself. So a lot of times for us to operate in this collective sense of being, whether we're in the States, whether we're in the islands, throughout this diaspora, we have to know who we are. We have to know our power. We have to know our worth and our value, which many of us do not know. Many of us are on a process of learning. Why? Because we have not been introduced to these entheogens in our youth. It isn't a culture for us, just like the birth culture, just like the current death care system. In many parts of the world, it's based on white people and what they think about us and how they think and how they feel our bodies operate in relation to theirs. So using these substances to tap into the ancestral realm, to tap into and ancestors meaning life and death, because many of our ancestors have yet to be born. So tapping into these other dimensions that exist around us anyway, but we haven't been conditioned spiritually to, for instance, tap into our womb space. Many women carry around cervical cancer and just different polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, tumors, fibroids, many things that affect Black women physically are coming from a spiritual space, whether it's from our great-great-grandmother that may have been raped or children being pulled away during the slave trade. The trauma affects our organs, it affects our cells, it affects our tissues, and we think we're doing everything right. Consciously, many of us are, but subconsciously, a lot of these things have a root to the disease. So using these plants that have been here for us, along with the herbs and vegetables and fruits and buying the land and homeschooling our children and creating solar power and all these wonderful things we have, allowing the plant medicine to complement all that we do and all that we are, to take us into these other layers of self and to these other dimensions around the worlds that we live in, the communities. Dealing with the medicine, again, Baba Kalindi E, a phenomenal man who, superhuman actually, who has worked with the African martial arts community for many years. And many of the martial arts teachings and science comes from psychedelic plant medicine or sacred plants. So through his work as a warrior and teacher, of African martial arts, he also brought about psilocybin mushrooms into our awareness. Baba recently became an ancestor, Good Friday. But just grateful for him for introducing this medicine, the history, the benefits, the knowledge, the wisdom, as it relates to plant medicine being used as a tool of survival. Again, rites of passage, a tool to travel the dimensions and see your ancestors and get downloads and tools and things that we need to progress forward in our walk. George Washington Carver was a mycologist, and we often wonder, how did he learn 200 uses for the peanut? It was because of the psilocybin and the awareness from the nature and earth that the peanut was able to speak to him and tell him what it was good for. You know, he's one of many, even before him, before we were able to use language. So using these ancient technologies to reprogram and deprogram and clean out the subconscious mind, to rid ourselves of the unfortunate circumstances with relationships and just even substance abuse. You know, many of us have been affected by crack in our communities and still are being affected by it. So using that to go in and reprogram ourselves, clean ourselves, have better homes, better relationships, set tangible goals for our families, but it takes tapping into yourself and moving out all of the things that no longer serve us. That way we can step into better eating, better living, our organs can function better, and we can tap into our organs ourselves and ask them what they need. You know, what's wrong, going into the spirit realms, tapping into our inner child selves, which a lot of us as adults operate out of those inner child spaces when we're stressed or when we're frustrated or angry. So a lot of our emotional stability isn't where it is. All of these things that I'm speaking of really deal with, again, emotional, mental, physical, financial stability. You know, so moving forward, using plant medicine and ritual with our spouses, with our children, with our elders, with our parents, to get more understanding and information and connection. You know, I'm here on the island, I'm naturally connecting more with the flowers around me as it relates to another type of medicine and beauty. May sound weird because we've never been taught the power of fungus or the power of flowers. So tapping into ourselves and the planet on our own to see what works best and how we can just, again, tap more into our spiritual gifts so we can serve one another better and be more joyful, authentic beings. The sacred plant medicines can sometimes be considered shadow work, which we've been taught to fear shadow and darkness, but that's the space of creation. So sometimes we have to step into that darkness so we can learn how to navigate in the dark and create from that space. You know, in order for a seed to reach its ultimate expression, it has to be buried in that dark, muddy, scary place. So again, I'm a proponent for sacred plant medicines for healing, for rites of passage for our children, to heal from disease, for our men who are coming from prison, again, children who are angry because they don't have fathers or mothers or the right environments in their home, the right foods and things, you know. So it just helps us to think better and to live better so we can be better, not just talk about it, not just dream about it and wish about it, but actually wake up every day and execute as the gods and goddesses that we are. Cultivating our own medicine. We can't leave it to the doctors to scribble on a piece of paper, God knows what, and we consume it into our bodies and expect it to serve our highest good. It doesn't work that way. So tapping in with ourselves, with our healers, with the earth to decide what's best for us, creating new medicines so we can create better outcomes for our future generations through COVID, through the vaccines, through all the toxins that we're being constantly bombarded with. Using the plant medicines again as a way to reprogram and remember who we are and where we come from in order to know where we're going, and creating new rituals based on the teachings of Dr. Sebi, the teachings of Baba Kalindi, and taking what we've learned from them and other ancestors and creating a new way, creating a new paradigm, new rituals and new medicines moving forward.
Indeed, indeed, Ashe. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sister Omolewa. It's time for Q&A. I got a ton of questions, but I'm not going to be selfish. We'll open it up. I want to give priority to what was in the order people wrote in the UVA. Bear with me here. Panelists, really quick, if you all have questions for each other, let's kick it off with you all. We had to become fast friends here.
Well, I would, and I can do it later, but I was just curious about the Aya University and how that's helping and healing men, women, children, and elders in the community where
Right.
you are, and whether they're receptive to it and the outcomes.
Thank you. We've been doing this for 24 years, and folks are receptive, men and women, and children, believe it or not, or our youth. We also have a middle school and high school, and we integrated throughout all the courses, as well as a special class for them. But both men and women are open to it because we go through the door of oppression. Part of what happens in terms of dealing with emotions in our community, very often,
Like, hopefully it's still
oppression
rideable. You know, we don't have any ice and
left
snow on the
out.
ground, because you just
I'm
never
sorry.
know when you get into November,
Okay, but
Anita,
they-
you know, bicycle riding.
oh, let me, oh, shoot.
All right, very good. So because we account for oppression that has come down through our family line, as well as the impact of oppression that comes from a police officer or any day-to-day work living in Black people in European settings, European dominant settings, then folks are open because it doesn't pretend that that doesn't exist, and we have to kind of create an isolation bubble as if that doesn't exist. We actually go through those doors. And part of one other thing quickly is our process is called warriors, healers, and builders. We must be skilled warriors and healers and builders. If I have a warrior mindset alone, then when I need to heal myself, or when I need to heal my children or my spouse, or be a healer in our community, I don't have practice. That's for the other people, okay? Or if I'm a healer alone, then when it's time to fight, I'm thinking, well, if we just kind of heal everybody, then white folks will stop killing us. And actually, none of that's true. We need to be warriors, healers, and builders. And it's a tall order, but because of that triumvirate combination, people are more receptive.
Wonderful. I'm glad to hear you guys are doing the work over there
Thank you.
for so many years. We'll connect later.
All right, let's do that. Appreciate it.
Definitely, I want the connection amongst presenters too. Sister Marina, you were able to get into the Whova chat for our session here and start answering some questions. So I'll let you curve. Would you recommend that we start with to begin a cleanse? You started mentioning burdock and yellow dog, tiny root. Folks, please do go to the chat in Whova. You'll see that response. But Sister Marina, if you want to speak more about herbs usage. Someone also asked about inflammation. Start, and then I have one for Omolewa.
Okay. So basically, Dr. Sebi taught us to and recommended us to use what he would consider the African biomineral balance, and that is basically intracellular chelation. And so with this intracellular chelation, the idea is to cleanse the cells from the inside, the outside, and in between. And so the herbs that were mentioned in the chat are specifically herbs that are used in that process. What they do, first and foremost, you have to adhere to Dr. Sebi's nutritional guidelines, right? And so it's a list of fruits and vegetables based on our genetic code that also help with cleansing the body. And then those specific herbs that were mentioned in the chat are used as a compound and administered 2 to 3 times a day. We drink water every day, spring water, not osmosis or, alkaline. They have a lot of technology now with water, but we're talking about naturally occurring spring water. You would drink the water based on your weight. So if you were 300 pounds, you would drink 150 ounces of water. So it's your weight divided by 2. That's how many ounces of water that you would drink a day. And as the herbs are doing the cleansing, the water is doing the flushing. And so the toxicity, comes out through our excretion and through our urine. Exercise is required, light exercise though, because it is intermittent fasting that you're doing. The light exercise could be yoga, stretching, 15 to 30 minutes of walking a day, just to keep the body going. And if you were particularly in the Usha village doing this, you also had the opportunity to use the sauna. So if you have access to a steam room or sauna or sacred healing lodge, you could also use that, because a lot of purification comes through our skin, which is the biggest cleansing organ of the body. So so yeah, those particular herbs that we mentioned, those were used as a compound to do the intracellular chelation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And so, yeah, please visit the chat, folks, to see more about her description, what she wrote, and then be able to get in contact with her as well. Sister Omolewa, someone has a question about mushrooms. What strains, the types best for antidepressant? These mushrooms.
Am I muted?
You-
Okay.
Good now.
There's different strains out there. I work primarily with Tamarian Blue, which is a strain that Baba Kalindi created outside of Detroit, which has an Egyptian signature. I hear golden teachers are really good. For me, it's more or less about, you know, just kind of having a good person who's growing them, or you cultivating them yourself, and the right intentions around them. You know, more or less, it's more about, I think, preparing yourself and doing the actual work over the strain. You just have to do your own more personal research around the strain, but we use Tamarian Blue.
Okay. Do you have anything to share as far as the environment of where the mushrooms are from, where they're grown, cultivated? I think.
Well, they come from all over the world. It just kind of depends. Like myself here in Jamaica, I cultivate them in my home here. I'm still getting acclimated to the environment. We're just now getting rain due to the hurricane/rainy season. So I'm learning more here in the environment, but more or less the person who's growing them, you know, and the type of environment and love that they cultivate and the work that they do. So that's why it's really best to cultivate your own sacred plant medicine. It's just like cannabis. You can go to the dispensary and get it, but once you learn more of the science and build a relationship with the medicine yourself is when you can pretty much transform it into what you need it to be and do for you and your children and your family and your community. Just like growing your own food, it's always going to have more love and energy and intentions on it when you grow it yourself.
Okay. So, and with that, can you speak about preparing spiritually before using psychedelics or entheogens?
I recommend massage therapy, just to remove the toxins and prepare the body for the healing and the meditation and just the healing that comes along and moving energies throughout the body. I recommend washing your hair, doing a sacred head washing ritual. I recommend clearing your space, clearing out your gut, you know, when you haven't been eating too well, hydrating yourself. You know, real quick with the question about the detoxing, one of the best, greatest forms of detoxing we have is proper breathing. So you can sometimes be vegan or however, all you want in detox, but sometimes just the simple act of breathing and centering and grounding yourself, you know, and releasing those energies and toxins through breath. So again, proper breathing, hydration before, during, and after. And again, already ridding yourself of as much as what you know isn't serving you before you go in such a spiritual transformational space that most people have never experienced. Mothers who birth, or those of us who have experienced those life or death experiences, or just are more connected to nature, you know what you need to do to be in your best space. You know, if you can. Sometimes you just gotta kind of do what you gotta do when you're healing or grieving or stagnant. So like I say, just cleansing. I say, like, if you're gonna bring a new baby home, how are you gonna prepare for what that feels like on the other end? Make your space sacred, make yourself beautiful. We should already have these sacred spaces in our homes and in our environment. We should have people that pour into us and feed into us. So the medicine will eventually help you. It's not a one-time shot, but it'll eventually help you to see better and feel and activate and be more intuitive with the things that you need to rid yourself from. emotionally, spiritually, physically, the foods, everything. Loving yourself, anointing yourself, affirming, speaking over yourself, surrounding yourself with beautiful things. You know, so I find really quick, even with me coming to Jamaica here, again, it's about overall. So it can be the food is A1, but where you live, the vibration of the environment, the power lines over your head, the foods and fruits and vegetables that don't grow around you. You know, so for me, it's about hitting all those points overall. Like I said, your lover, your spouse, your parents, your children, we have such attachments to these peoples and things, but allowing the substances to let us know what we need to detach from, when and how, and clean it up. So yes.
Thank you. Okay, really quick, we're at our end. I've been given some permission to, because we should have made this an hour and 15 minutes, because health is a very popular, important topic. For those who want to go on to the next session with do it ourselves education for sovereignty with youth, you can go ahead, but I need to make sure to shout out our sponsors. Let me share my screen really quick. And then if any of our panelists can stay on and answer a few more live questions, we'll do that. One of our here sponsors is the Eco Woman Institute, and they are hosting, sponsoring host of our Mixer Welcome Time Volunteer. And so we want to thank them. We'll be having a place where you can see our sponsors, and as well as where you can message on through Hoover, our panelists, get connected with them and their site. Is there, if there anyone else who's still on has any questions, we can resume just for a little bit longer. Let me get out of stop sharing here.
I promised, if you would, to tell people what natural I'm doing.
Yes,
please, let me do that. I put it in the, anyway. So I use Madagascar's leaf of life plant for hypertension as well as overall health. Leaf of life plant is indigenous to Madagascar. It is found in Jamaica. It's found everywhere African people went. You'll find a leaf of life plant. It's known by some other names, but it's as a powerful healer. It's the kind that sees what your body needs and begins to address it. It's called leaf of life. I also use black garlic as an antiplatelet and as a blood thinner, as well as something that will counter the toxins that this drug-eluting stent is eluting in my in my system. A lot of people don't know black garlic is regular garlic that has been cured. Some people call it fermented, but technically it's not fermented. It's put in a rice cooker or heated in a certain kind of way. But we're not talking about the kind of caramelization of garlic. Just look it up. It's a powerful piece. But it's, in addition to being powerful like garlic, it also has allomelanins. You've heard of eumelanin, which gives us the dark brown skin. You've heard of neuromelanin in our brains, and you've heard of pheomelanin, which is the reddish kind of yellow-red melanin. But also plants have melanin, and that's called allomelanin. And garlic is one of the most powerful allomelanins. So you're not just getting the typical or the traditional powers of garlic, that multiplied with the allomelanins. I use it there daily. Also, I use nattokinase and serrapeptase. These are to help postpone the stent being blocked by my body's natural response. All right, to postpone it. I say postpone it because eventually my body will block it. And my option then typically would to be going back in to get them to unclog it. I'm not going to do that. I'm growing my own arteries, okay? And I have a particular exercise routine that's a modification of a HIIT, high intensity interval training exercise routine to literally stimulate what they call collateral coronary arteries, what I call freedom arteries. and basically allowing my body to really entomb that stent and the drugs that it eludes while building healthy arteries around it. That's basically. There are some other things, but those are the key ones that I wanted to make sure, herbs and diet stuff that I wanted to make sure people got.
Let's see here. Did anyone else have any questions? You can unmute yourself. We'll give a little bit more time. I know some people wanted to know more herbs for inflammation. I think the heart, the hypertension, what you share, Baba, helps with that. And then also
I'll share about can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm talking about, I had a question about inflammation, especially with African Americans eat a lot of pork, you know what I mean? Especially that causes inflammation herb-wise. What can you do? And inflammation is in arthritis. What herbs do you recommend for that? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Who are you directing that question to?
To whomever. Yeah.
I'll just say real briefly, and I know you're asking specifically about herbs, but oftentimes there are entities and different energies attached to these feelings and flare-ups and what could be anger or other issues subconsciously in the body that are triggering the inflammation within the body as well. So not forgetting about those spiritual and metaphysical things that cause the physical body to flare up and have certain conditions.
Great, thank you. I agree with that totally. And often uric acid deposits are the product of eating the red meat. They get lodged into the joints. Bromelain, along with black cherry juice and fresh pineapple, will help to dissolve that. As well as telling us if we're going to eat pork, to grow it ourselves and stop counting on Smithfield Farms. So you have the intermediate piece, but the longer piece is for us to realize that the food manufacturers are not our friends, and what we're eating. In addition, whether some things are just bad, period, it's made worse by the processing there. But anyway, with my father, I have used bromelain. He had gout and arthritis, and dissolving the uric acid deposits was very helpful for him. That inflammation, I really don't like dealing with inflammation directly. I like dealing with inflammation, just like high blood pressure is a response to something. High blood pressure is not a disease, and inflammation is not a disease, although we're told that it is. If we try to treat inflammation without it and ignore the cause of it, then we're like a dog chasing its tail. So look at what's causing the inflammation and address it there. In the case of arthritis, typically the uric acid deposits are the chief cause, and that's where I try to go there.
I think the two answers that were given were absolutely amazing. The approach of holistic wellness is really what it's all about. So like Sister Omolewa had mentioned, I think it's really important for people not just to depend on herbs, but to also focus on just, healing the entire body, the entire mind, and your experiences as well. Whenever we're dealing with inflammation, again, we go to the endocrine system and the central nervous system. A lot of times, inflammation comes with pain, and so we'll use marijuana tincture to address that. But we also would work with herbs like horsetail, butterfly pea. These are really good for not just inflammation, but pain, inflammation, and swelling. We try to address all of those at the same time. Soursop leaf tea is really good taken at night specifically because it helps to allow the body to rest and relax and repair. And so butcher's broom is also another really good one when you're dealing with whenever we deal with inflammation, we always address pain, inflammation, and swelling, and the central nervous system.
Thank you.
I just had a quick comment.
Yes, please.
Okay, I just wanted to thank all of the panelists. I just turned 20 years old, and right now I'm kind of being introduced to new ideas of health. I've had to relearn a lot of things. So just making this space, you've opened me up to a lot more to research and get into. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, really quick, here's my big question. I'm gonna combine it and see what Marina and Omolewa in particular. I know Omolewa is currently in Jamaica, born and raised here in the States. Sister Marina, I understand you spent many years, a good bit of time in Tanzania and also Honduras with Dr. Sebi. Baba Wekesa, I'm not sure of how much living in other countries you have done, but I'm sure you've traveled quite a bit, especially to the continent and elsewhere. What can we say about, in the theme of what the Black Sustainability Network is about, really being for the diaspora and global, is our knowledge of how health is different in some of our diasporic countries that we've lived in, or what community health or community healing looks like, how you compare our time with our brothers and sisters here in the States versus Honduras, Jamaica, Ghana, Tanzania, elsewhere. Just in a nutshell.
Well, mine will be short because I have traveled, but I haven't lived, and I'd let the folks who actually live there much longer. I've traveled a number of different African nations and maintain connection with them. Generally, the question, typically it's holistic. European culture is an invasive culture, all right, and their medicine, therefore, and the medical approach is invasion, and invasive procedures. So health and helping the body heal and being supportive is not something that comes out of European culture. And differently in Tanzania, which I spent a good deal of time, and other places, folks literally are address it holistically and also seeking to help the body heal as opposed to impose healing on the body. I'll be done. I'm done with that.
Okay.
Your question specifically was, how do people in these other indigenous lands deal with healing? Was that the question?
Yeah, what you can compare from your time here in the States versus your time in those other communities. I know we're all dealing with the impacts of various things impacting our health around the world, but just some lessons learned comparing being in North America, Europe versus our more tropical and predominantly Black and indigenous
Well, it's interesting. Sister Omolewa and I both. I'm actually
learned.
I'm sorry.
Did I do something?
Sorry, it's a little lagging. I didn't mean to cut your wisdom. Were you going to say something?
No, she was asking you if you were saying something. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just basically saying that it's what's so interesting. I'm currently in Philadelphia, but I also am based in Jamaica now, specifically in St. Elizabeth Parish. And what the brother Wekesa said, he hit it on the nail. You know what I mean? But if I could just add to what he said, my personal experience when I was in Tanzania was that I went there searching for knowledge and information from the indigenous people there. And what I found was that they were really looking towards me for knowledge and information. And so I think what ends up happening is because we have a little more access to information, the people tend to look to us for information in regard to how they should live their life, how they should, because the colonization, has been impressed in Africa. A lot of times we think that they have a lot of the traditions keeping, but really it was our duty actually to keep the tradition. And so when I was in Africa, a lot of people were not focused on their health. They were more focused on the politics and situations surrounding, you know, their immediate situation. So my approach to them, I triangulated my practice when in different countries, first dealing with the mechanics of the body, which would be like qigong, yoga, things of that nature, and then the emotional wellness of those people, dealing with flower medicine and things of that nature, and also dealing with nutrition. The great thing about being in indigenous places is a lot of the food substances there are very natural. So you get an opportunity to consume foods that are natural. We can just really reintroduce the fruits and vegetables that are already indigenous on the land, because the more natural indigenous the foods are, the better they are towards helping our body and assimilating the health and the nutrients, the minerals that are necessary. And so, you know, I would put them, remind them, really, the reminder, reminding them about the different fruits that are available there. I found, particularly when in Tanzania, they had this particular apple that you can also find in Jamaica, the Ethiopia apple. Giving them that in a juice form. We did a lot of vegetable juicing, including red onions in green juices and things of that nature. Really just focusing on the fruits, because the fruits were so indigenous and so natural in Tanzania. A lot of people healed with fruit. But if there was a situation that we needed specifically where we had to incorporate the herbs, we used a lot of blessed thistle. In Africa, we used a lot of soursop there as well, specifically in Tanzania. In Jamaica, a lot of bisi, what they call bisi or kola nut, cheney root, search my heart. These are all herbs, and the way that they're named in Jamaica is very interesting, because they utilize the word sound power there to initiate the healing. So if you're taking something like Search My Heart, that's what it's going to do. So again, just really focusing on triangulating the practice so that they can have the holistic approach, and then utilizing what's already there.
Indeed. So would you agree, Sister Omolewa, to compare, you know, going to the countries where our brothers and sisters are, where the soil quality, I'm sure, is still much better, the variety of indigenous fruits, I mean, and things that we don't get here, but they're like not taking advantage of it or not in tune with it and what their grandmothers and elders knew, and more focused on, you know, the dominant cultures of the world and you know, economics and things like that, and not that the treasure of nature that's there. Are you finding that too, going from you know, the Midwest to Jamaica? The grass is greener syndrome. They trying to come to America. You ran away there, you know.
Well, there's all of that. I was having a little debate with someone, and we were talking about, like, I'm like, oh, Detroit got churches on every corner. You know, they got more churches than anywhere. They said, no, Jamaica does. So I looked it up and Googled it. And yes, Jamaica has more churches, you know, based on the size of the island and the population, and still finding that food, yes, has such great healing benefits, but that mind, that spirit is going to overrule all of that. So I see it often in the Rasta community and in the local community where I stay here in the St. Mary Parish. Jesus rules the mind, the spirit, the television. They're more, you know, they're becoming more Americanized. And, you know, you should see the line wrapped around the KFC and the Burger King and things like that, you know. So it is the food, it is the herbs, but getting into the healing. And what I'm finding here more recently is even with the level of trauma, some of the people here have experienced things that only people in the United States watch on TV. You know, rape here is at an all-time high. Child molestation is at an all-time high here, you know. Good afternoon. So going into healing more of the trauma so that people can feel better about themselves, think better about themselves, eat better about themselves, being proactive with the herbs and things, not just when something happens. You know what I mean? I'm kind of outside and it's kind of disturbing my,
It's okay.
how are you?
It's okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, just
Y'all
with
have
that
similar.
whole, yeah, just with the whole piece of, moving out the trauma so that the herbs can even be better absorbed and received into the body and into the bloodstream. You know what I'm saying? It's just taking all of this awareness that we have as an African people and as an African culture, with all of the education and knowledge and wisdom that we have, actually putting it into use.
Okay. I'm gonna sneak a quick segue, and we're gonna wrap up. In my notes emailed to you. We talked, the herbs are for the healing. The ancient texts, spiritual texts tell us that. We've talked about a number of herbs to use today. What about the state of the plant medicine? Are we respecting the plants, the herbs, the land? As holistic health, veganism has become more trendy with our people. We're not going to talk about the big, oppressors and things. Just what we are doing on our responsibility to the land as descendants of some of the oldest people of this planet. People be hitting me up to buy some sea moss in my DMs now on Instagram, and it wasn't like that 5 years ago. And this herb and that. Can y'all speak a little bit about any concerns, observations you all have? Even though you work with plants, you guys are business owners and practitioners. Are we any concerns with the industry around our herbs and plant medicine? What we need to be doing differently? A message that something that the Black Sustainability Network should really be champions for and explore research. Any quick thoughts on that? Maria, go ahead, please.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to say I could definitely speak to that. While I was in Jamaica, I had an opportunity to travel the island a few times, and one of my experiences in St. Thomas, I got around some brothers that were divers, and so I asked them to dive sea moss for me, and so they were like, you want 200, 300, 400 pounds? And I'm like, no. Just under 100 pounds. If we can get 100 pounds wet, we know that when it's a lot of feedback in the background. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Can you mute yourself really quick, please?
Yes, so I was just saying that one of the things that I pride myself with is to understand the nature of nature, right? And so you have people who, they contact me constantly and they want sea moss. They're like, can I get 100 pounds? You never sell 100 pounds to any one person. Do you mind moving your phone? Yeah. So we try what we try to do is we try to work with small batches when it comes to herbs, because we understand that specifically when it comes to sea moss, it's such a precious mineral. Just recently, I think personally, as a result of Dr. Sebi's work, when he did his United States tour and the worldwide tours that he was doing, he brought a lot of awareness specifically about this one particular oceanic plant, and people kind of taking it overboard. You find people who want to purchase 5 and 10 pounds at a time, and I don't think it's anything wrong with that, but I think we as the healers, we have to educate people on the culture of sustainability when it comes to herbs, right? And so when people want to purchase 100 and 200 pounds of sea moss, it's just not, it doesn't work out in any way. Sea moss has to regrow itself. When you snatch that plant off of the rock, it has to grow back. And if you're taking hundreds of pounds at a time, you're not allowing the ocean to replenish herself. There's a certain ecosystem that also needs to be honored and respected, that I think personally with working in the sea moss industry has not been respected. You know, they forget that there's plant life, that there's ocean life, that need, you know, they survive off of that plant. And so a lot of people, you know, specifically when I was getting divers in Jamaica to harvest it for me, that we found that, you know, everybody was jumping in the ocean at the same time, and a lot of the workers, the divers, didn't really have that holistic approach when they were reefing sea moss, and so they would take hundreds and hundreds of pounds, and it takes time for these plants to grow back. And so then when somebody who's ethically wildcrafting the sea moss, you know, what you find is there's nothing left. Or when you do find a little bit and you collect it, a lot of times what you'll find is the sea moss is not mature enough for the consumer. And so the consumer is complaining, and they're like, oh, it didn't make enough gel for me. And it's like, well, it was caught really young, you know. The other thing is that a lot of people don't know what's real and what's not real. So there's this grab about, you know, sea moss, but a lot of people don't have the knowledge and the education that comes with taking a plant like sea moss. Like, yeah, it stores for 20 some odd years, and it doesn't go bad if it's stored properly. But so when people say that they want 10 and 15 pounds, I'm always wondering, like, what's that about? Is that for like the third and fourth generation? That's a lot of sea moss, you know? Mm-hmm. And so the way God works, God makes plants small. He doesn't make them large, and he makes them based on how we use them. In my home in Monroe, I live in a mountain called Mount Zion, and I have some plants. Before I moved there, there was 4 years that had went by and nobody had occupied the land, and so I have sea moss growing there. I'm sorry, sea moss. I have soursop there. I have guava, I have coconut, I have mango, I have what they call pear, what we call avocado. And these plants were not growing. And so we had to go to the plants and communicate with them. We had to let them know we were here. We had to pull back some of the leaves and let them know, hey, we're here. We're trying to grab, we're trying to receive from you, and honor the earth, you know, by giving it the sunlight that it needed. So taking down certain weeds and things that were growing and were shading the plants so that they couldn't get the nutrients from the sunlight that was necessary to grow and to thrive, and then watering, giving the plants extra water. You know, those plants, you know, when we got there, but they were stagnated. But then once we started to cultivate and communicate with the plants, what we found was that they started bearing in abundance, you know. And so it's really about the education. It's our responsibility as the healers to educate the masses in regards to a sustainable culture when it comes to accessing different plants and sacred medicine.
Thank you. Baba or Omolewa, any contribution to your concerns for the industry and the politics around our herbs and plant medicine, the way we're consuming them, or what we can do differently? And we'll just wrap up from there. You can unmute yourself if you have any contribution. But that was great, Sister Marina. You nailed it. It's a big issue, because we're stewards of this land, so we can't put it on any other dominant class or whatnot. The way and our people like trends, and the healthful trends are positive. I'm happy for that, but we really got to show respect for these medicines, this plant life. Well, thank you all so much. My speakers, my panelists, thank you again.
Let's continue to